Welcome to this episode of Tech Threads. I'm your host, Max Watson, and today we're talking about scaling products and a little bit of AI with Jacob Simons, who's the senior lead product manager at Bill. Well, Jake, welcome to Tech Threads. Glad we could have you on tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We're going to talk about scaling products and kind of product growth. I know you have a lot of experience with that, but I think it's going to be a really fun with some of the questions we have and just some of the insights that I think you're going to have that could help a lot of people in the UPG community are going to be great. Before we jump into that, could you kind of give a little rundown of who you are and kind of what you do?
Sure. My name's Jake Simons, and I'm a product manager. Uh, I've been in product for about 12 years. Spent a lot of time in the Salt Lake Valley working for local companies, some e-commerce work, did very little fintech work prior to my current role. And then it got into marketplaces. I worked at KSL Classifieds for about 3.5 years. And then spent about the same 3.5 years working for CHG Healthcare in Midvale. Both of those are two-sided marketplaces. Mostly, I worked on the buyer side of those marketplaces. And then I spent about 3.5 years again. It's like a theme. 3.5 years at New Relic, working on their growth team, focusing mostly on monetization and product-led growth. The last about 2 years of that, I ran the bottom half of the self-serve conversion funnel and was responsible for basically everything through from conversion through to retention. Um, and now I work at Bill.com on the spend and expense product. Right now, I'm a senior lead product manager over the onboarding experience, and I also manage their card experience team.
Yeah, lots of experience, lots of different companies, which I'm sure is a huge benefit, especially for growth of products. You've seen it all. You've seen, and I'm sure you've worked at all sorts of, stages of companies as well.
Yeah, I've kind of had the lovely opportunity to work at some startup sized companies, some enterprise companies, very large SaaS tech companies, and market leaders in a lot of cases. So it's definitely been a wild ride. That's one of the things that I like about being a product manager is I can take the skills that I've learned and apply them basically to any problem set. Um, and the changing nature of each product and each organization is what really keeps me engaged. It's what drives me. Finding a new product space to work in and apply those skills is the best thing in the world for me.
How has your perception of like product growth and scalability changed as you've worked at these different types of companies from like small startups to, larger enterprise? Does it shift or change the way you look at growing products when you change those companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that changes is the customer profile is very different when you're working for like a smaller company compared to a customer that or a company that only focuses on like enterprise customers. So there are very different approaches based on the customer persona that you're working towards solving problems for. Like for example, in my current role, we're very much a small to medium-sized business or lower mid-market company, which is a very different customer persona than an enterprise customer, which was my customer at my last job. So there are different approaches, there are different needs, there's different scale questions that those customers are asking, and the technology has to be able to answer all of those for that very specific persona. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the skills are basically the same, right? Like you're still trying to find things that are useful and delightful and margin enhancing that people are willing to pay money for, but you have to be able to apply those very specifically to that persona. Um, and like it is even taking, I'm only about 6 weeks into my new role, and I'm having to shake off some of the behaviors that I had learned around enterprise customers, sort of like their willingness to spend is different. Their like the people that you're working with inside of an organization are going to be different in a small to medium sized business than you would be at an enterprise level business. So all of that kind of shapes how you approach both selling and scaling into an organization.
Right. What do you think are the biggest like misconceptions that come with product growth and scaling products that kind of span all three types of businesses?
That is a fantastic question. I think people are too obsessed with um, or get lost in the weeds on driving funnel conversion. and getting too uh it's not even too numbers oriented, but they lose the idea of building something like really delightful and just solving user problems. And at the end of the day, even growth product, which is a very specific type of product management, is about solving user problems and building something that is delightful. But there are certainly different flavors that come into play when you're thinking about, scaling into an organization or scaling your product and growing, driving engagement, for example, across a customer base. That is there are different flavors there, but um, often what I've seen is, it can become just about only increasing conversion, like, or we have to only focus on increasing conversion, and you lose sight of building something really delightful for the customer.
Right. Have you seen, because I was thinking about this earlier before we even hopped on, because I feel like there's a couple ways you can look at like product growth, like through the conversion funnel, like getting new customers and converting them up, or, growing in terms of like just making an awesome product and keep on
Yeah.
making it better. Is there a balance between like trying to get new customers and like new features added versus just making the product you already have phenomenal for your current users?
Yeah, I think the risk is always there to become a feature factory and think that by adding more features, we will grow, which can be the case, right? Especially if you're in a high growth segment, you can find the right mix of just adding more functionality to your product and and thereby continuing to grow. But oftentimes, what happens is when only focusing on adding more features, the craft of product management gets lost. And you make the product so messy that it is hard for a customer to understand what is valuable and what is useful and what they're actually paying for. And that landscape, uh, in my mind, makes is a bad recipe for a good user experience, and your product will decline. Period. I'm very bullish about that. I've seen it happen um, across a couple of different products. I've talked to friends about it, where when chasing that top line growth very specifically, right? Like we only care about adding new users. We only care about adding top line revenue. And everything is kind of geared towards that. As the customer experience suffers because you're not putting resources towards it, you're not cleaning up tech debt, you're not building a good experience, users notice, right? They're not
Mhm.
stupid. They notice. They realize that things are getting more complicated or that the features that they love no longer work or are buggy. There's all sorts of different scenarios that happen there. But ultimately, there is a negative impact. And like, I was even listening to a podcast on the way to work today. It was TED Talk, and it was a founder talking about why startups fail. And her point was that the number one reason startups fail is because they are feature oriented and not solution oriented, right? So they're not building a solution to solve a problem. They are just building to build. And I think that's where a lot of times you can get lost in that scenario, right? Like you're just building to build rather than even in product-led growth, building something that is so delightful that it then drives growth. And finding that balance hard, very hard, but
Mhm.
absolutely critical. And most of that work, especially at like a more senior level, is about organizational buy-in. Less so like the craft is the craft, right? Understanding that you have to build delightful products that help the company grow that are margin enhancing, and then being able to like evangelize that across an entire organization is the trick, really. And if in the right organization there's buy-in, you start building features that are delightful and the growth will come. Sometimes in the wrong organization you have to fight a little bit more to get that organizational buy-in, but at the end of the day I really believe that that's the direction that gets the most long-term sustainable growth and like product expansion.
Yeah, and I feel like I've heard a lot of PMs talk about that of like turning into a feature factory, trying to just grind out the latest like chat bot or whatever, throwing it in
Yeah.
your product and just like calling it a day. Why do people fall into that? And what can you do to kind of help your teams not fall into that?
Well, there's a great book called Avoiding the Build Trap that or just called Build Trap, I think. Escaping the Build Trap. That's a phenomenal book. Highly recommend that everybody read it. It's gives kind of an outline uh, that is easy to follow, but the gist of it is, well, I'll answer your question first. Why companies fall into the build trap is because there's a drive to be able to associate a return, like very specifically an ROI, to a team. So as you are resourcing in an area, like especially in large companies, they want to be able to say, well, that company deliver or that team delivered these features, so they are valuable, right? So oftentimes um, it's a very simple equation, right? Like X number of engineers should equal X revenue, Y revenue. And that's where it gets a little bit messy, right? Because oftentimes the things that you should be doing are not necessarily like margin accretive. They might be a cost neutral piece of work, or they might actually be decreasing costs. Or sometimes, like some of the stuff that I'm thinking about doing right now, are going to cost the company money. They are potentially a long-term play towards retention and expansion. And it's my job to paint that picture, right? To do the research and say, customers have said this. The data tells us this. The hypothesis is that if we do this thing, it will help us increase customer expansion by X% over this time frame. And I'm going to go run these tests to prove that. And if they pan out, then the investment that we're making will be worth it, right? That narrative piece is the way you get out of the build trap. So like it's very easy to fall into becoming some or like for a company to become a company that views success as shipping. The idea is to turn success into a really incredible like customer experience. And you have to be able to tell that narrative using things like data, anecdotal and quantitative, being able to like go and run tests and have proof that your hypothesis was correct. And then building, but all of those things build enough trust within the organization for you to say, I've shown you the path. Now we're going to let it play out for 6 months. And hopefully you have enough organizational buy-in to then say, well, now, okay, we learned something new, so let's iterate. Great. We learned something new. Let's iterate again. And then like that in what's interesting is that is building features, but it's more about building the right features for the right reason at the right time instead of just building to build, right? Like instead of quantifying success of an engineer or a PM by how much they produce.
Right. And it seems like you kind of take the more like long game approach when it comes to building. Cause I feel like a lot of startups and like I know some companies just in my personal experience, if they take that quick product, quick feature, throw it out there, just trying to build all these products, it kind of taints the customer experience. And it seems like they never really pan out as well as you would think.
Yeah. I think the idea of like failing fast and failing or like fail early and fail fast is something that still permeates a lot of product management, product development. Um, I, to a degree, believe that, but I also think in in the businesses that I work for, we don't want a customer for 6 months. We want a customer for 10 years. And that is about building a relationship. It's not just building features, right? Like I need my customers to trust that the products that I work on are going to consistently deliver value for them so that the money they're paying us is worth it. The second that slips and like we stop delivering value like very visibly, they'll go find somebody else. right? Like, and that's a double-edged sword. You have to be consistent, but you have to also have to be cutting edge or you'll get disrupted. So there's like this really fine balance of scaling into new technology without losing your head, right? Without like not the risk is not being thoughtful about it. The risk is doing it just to say that you're doing it. AI is a great example of this.
Mhm.
All right, like it is everywhere. My personal approach to it is to be incredibly thoughtful about how and when we are leveraging AI. We will have to leverage AI. Like it would be insane to not. But just slapping AI into our product to say that there is AI in the product is a mistake, right? And I think that example, you could apply that to any number of technologies. The idea is delight, surprise, but be consistent about that, right? Like you need to be able to say, like, I'll use an example in my current role. Like my major charter is running onboarding for our spend and expense product, which is essentially a business credit card. There's a myriad of things that we could do there with AI. The question is, when is the right time to introduce AI in the funnel from application start until the first time they swipe their credit card, where it makes the most sense and drives the most value, right? It's not just sprinkle AI everywhere to say that we have AI in the funnel, right? It's not, it's, I mean, there are companies out there right now that are just like, we have AI and it's not, right? And that, in my opinion, that inconsistency, you're saying you have an experience that you're not going to be able to deliver against, will taint the customer journey. And again, I'm looking at trying to build customers for 10 years. I want them to understand that we're building something that will be beneficial to them. And like, yeah, I want to wow them in the right way, at the right time, with the right tool, right? It's not just about saying that we did it.
Yeah, and we actually, funny you bring up AI. I had talked with Jacob Draper. I'm not sure if you know who he is, who works at Adobe. He's
Mm-mm.
on part of their like analytical products, and he's like pushing these AI things. He talked about the exact same thing. A lot of people are just grabbing AI. They have the solution, but there's no problem to it, and it kind of just clutters products. And AI is still kind of in this stage where it does crazy things sometimes, and so like you got to worry about that as well. So it kind of just
Yes.
changes a bunch of things. I mean, for you, I mean, you're in like fintech with Bill. How do you see AI coming into that picture with like financial tech and money and
Yeah.
finances where you can't really like mess up. You have a very
Yeah.
low
Yeah.
you can't yeah.
Again, you have to be thoughtful. In our world, expediency is everything. So anywhere that we can use AI to speed things up, remove manual work from our customers is going to be beneficial. Um, as a growth product manager, I'm looking for ways that we can like give customers that wow moment where what used to take 5 to 10 minutes takes a minute. That to me, especially in like an accounts payable and accounts receivable world, or in a like a coding transactions world, a financial controller does not want to spend their entire afternoon looking at receipts and coding transactions. So if we can make that take 15 minutes, that's a huge deal. Where I see it going further than that, I'm really interested in agentic AI right now and how we could potentially leverage different agents to connect uh, yeah, to connect to vendors to make paying bills substantially easier. One click, right? Approvals and go. To your point, there's a lot of risk in that. Agentic's maybe not there just yet, but it is an interesting thing to like think about and start testing into to understand what is possible. And more so than what is possible, like what is the appetite for our customers to hand off tasks like that to an agent. Because if there is no appetite and no adoption, it's not worth it for us, right? Again, being thoughtful about it. Is it really cool? Yes. Agentic is sick, but will customers use it? Will our customers very specifically use it? Will an accountant or a bookkeeper or a controller use it? We have to go find all that out, right? Like that's the journey we are on right now. It's still early days with agentic, so it's the question is very much like right in front of us. I don't think anybody knows the answer for my business just yet.
Right. I think even like, because I was watching some ads the other day. I think it's like Google or they have some like agentic AIs that can go like book hotels for you and book flights.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, I know AI, like it messes up. It says crazy things sometimes. I don't know if I trust it just giving it my like credit card and being like, hey, give me a flight to, New York.
Yeah.
Like, is it gonna mess up? Or like, I think there's this like perception as well that like at first, because yeah, we were even talking about this with Jacob the other day, is like a lot of features in software, you kind of have this expectation where it's supposed to be 100%. Like
Hmm.
calculators, like it should not mess up. But we've built this perception around AI where we're almost okay with it messing up. We're like, we know it's gonna mess up, we're still gonna use it and kind of like just know that it might not be completely accurate. So I wonder if that's gonna affect kind of these experiences like you're talking about, like how much we actually trust AI to do things correctly moving
Yeah.
forward in the future.
I think that changes drastically the second we're asking it to actually perform tasks. I think it's
Mhm.
funny and interesting when some GPT based product gives you a funky answer hallucinating. That gets really serious if it hallucinates on a multi-million dollar payment, right? So
Mhm.
that's to your point, in especially in fintech. Um, I think LLM based things are interesting, like chat assistants, interesting, probably less consequential if one hallucinates while it's talking to a customer about an account setup or if they have a question they want to ask. The second you're asking it, to your point, to connect a credit card to a vendor to pay a bill and report back that the bill was paid or to ask for approval to pay the bill, that has to be perfect. It has
Mhm.
to be. We're probably close to something like that in, like from a technology perspective, could uh agentic do that? Sure. I don't know that it's gonna anytime soon.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot of like research papers about AI, and there's kind of like these two parties. There's people who are kind of bullish about it and are like, yep, we're just getting started. It's going to keep growing exponentially, kind of like it has. And then there are some researchers who are saying like AI is kind of almost hitting its limits. Like in order to
Yeah.
actually make it grow exponentially, like we've seen in the past 2 years, we need like an absurd amount of data that gets
Yep.
passed into it. And so, like, there's two ways it could go. And definitely, like in the fintech space, if it's not going to keep getting more and more accurate, more and more reliable, and more that we like know what it's going to do and we can see what it's doing, because that's even a problem right now. Like, we don't know sometimes how it gets its answers, it just
It
pops it
just
out.
does. Yeah, it
And
just
so,
does.
yeah, that trust aspect. I know we're kind of wrapping up on time. Do you have any last advice or things you'd like to share with the UPG community about growth, scalability, or just growing products in general?
Yeah, I mean, growth products where it's at. Do growth product. No, I had this realization at my last company, and I've shared this with a couple of people. I think all product managers are or should be growth product managers. And what I find fairly often is that because there is pressure to perform and to deliver, sometimes the growth pieces of being a product manager get overlooked, right? You're not necessarily focused on how to onboard customers to your product and how to drive growth inside of your own area of control. And I think as product management changes, it is becoming more and more important for all product managers to think about their products as a growth product manager, especially in the world where AI is becoming so prominent. Your job is not just to deliver, it is to build an experience. It is to build an experience that people want to engage with, that adds value to the product, that then is like margin accretive, right? Like you definitely have to build something that is valuable enough that people are willing to either stay in the product or expand into the product because of it. And that takes thought. It takes it takes planning, takes a takes a growth funnel, right? And so I always encourage product managers to think about their product in the context of a growth product manager. You are building something that you need people to use, and that is growth product.
Right. And I think that's something, yeah, no matter like what stage of your PM career you're in, what type of PM you are, if you're more technical or not, like just thinking about and having that mindset is something that's super beneficial. But Jake, thanks for hopping on tonight. I'm super
Thanks,
excited to
man.
share this with the UPG community. And I think a lot of people could learn a lot from what you said tonight.
I mean, I hope so. Geez. I'm just kidding. That was fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jake.